Did you know there was once a law that made it illegal to die? Yes, to die. In 2005, the small Spanish town of Lanjaron passed an ordinance forbidding people from dying within its limits. Because the town cemetery was full and no one could agree on where to put the new one. That's not the only strange decree passed through time. History is filled with bizarre, absurd, and sometimes downright hilarious laws. Not made by fools, but by kings, queens, emperors, and parliaments who genuinely believed they were doing the right thing. And the real mystery? Some of these laws actually worked. Others, they failed so spectacularly that they became infamous. Now here's a challenge for you. As we go through this strange journey of history's weirdest laws, drop a comment with the weirdest modern law you've ever heard of, or better yet, make one up. If it's absurd enough, we just might feature it in the next video. Let's travel through time. Let's start with England, because when it comes to weird laws, no country does it quite like the British. In 1313, under King Edward II, it became illegal to wear armor in Parliament. Not symbolic armor, actual metal plate armor. This law, incredibly, is still technically on the books. One day, because England's political debates were getting so heated, there were fears members of Parliament might actually attack each other with swords. The irony? The very people who made the laws were so untrusting of each other, they had to pass laws to prevent themselves from going full medieval. Fast forward to the 17th century, still in England. Imagine this. You're walking your cow down the street in daylight. Perfectly normal, right? Not if you're in London in 1653. A law was passed making it illegal to walk a cow during daylight hours because people were using cows to sneak into markets and dodge taxes on livestock. The law punished innocent farmers alongside tax evaders because the government couldn't figure out who was cheating. Now, you might say, that's just history. It was a different time. But laws just as strange, and even stranger, continued to appear long after we supposedly became more civilized. Let's head over to France. In 1958, a small French village called Les Lavandous passed a law banning residents from dying on weekends and public holidays. The mayor was furious the French government hadn't approved funding for a new cemetery. So in protest, he made death illegal. On paper, at least. Did it work? Of course not. People still died, but it got the mayor national headlines, and eventually a new cemetery. Speaking of France, there's an older, even more legendary tale from the 18th century, when a pig was once put on trial for murder. Yes, a pig. In Falaise, Normandy, in 1386, a sow was arrested for killing a child. It stood trial, was found guilty, and was executed by public hanging. The trial was real, the sentence was carried out, and the pig even had a lawyer. You might be laughing, but to people at the time, animals were seen as moral agents. If they broke the law, they had to face justice. In fact, Europe saw over 200 animal trials between the 13th and 18th centuries. Even insects weren't safe. In 1519, a group of weevils, tiny beetles that eat crops, were summoned to court in France and charged with destroying a vineyard. They never showed up, of course. They were insects. Still, the court issued a verdict against them. Now, cross the ocean to America, the land of freedom and very creative legislation. In 1911, the state of Washington passed a law that made it illegal to paint polka dots on the American flag. It might sound like a harmless joke, but back then, flag desecration was seen as a serious offense, even if it involved polka dots. In Alabama, there was a law on the books for decades that forbade carrying an ice cream cone in your back pocket. Why? Horse thieves. In the 19th century, people would lure horses away using an ice cream cone in their pocket, then claim they found the horse wandering and take ownership. It became so widespread that the state had to outlaw it. Ice cream was weaponized for theft. Meanwhile, in California, it was once illegal to whistle for a lost canary before 7 a.m. A real ordinance passed in Berkeley in the early 1900s. It's as if they feared a whistling rebellion of birds and their overly enthusiastic owners. Now let's go back further to ancient Greece. In Athens around 600 BCE, a man named Draco created one of the earliest written law codes. His solution to crime? Punish everything with death. Stealing fruit? Death. Being lazy? Death. Wearing the wrong clothes in a temple? Death. The laws were so brutal, we now call harsh laws draconian. But here's the twist. Draco didn't see them as cruel. He saw them as fair. The idea was that all citizens, rich or poor, would be treated equally under the same unforgiving laws. Eventually, the Athenians decided they had had enough of being executed for minor offenses and replaced Draco's code. But not before his name became legend. Jump to the Middle Ages in Germany, where a town called Nordlingen passed a law that you could only be buried in a coffin made of local stone. Why? The town was built inside a meteor crater full of a rare mineral called suvaite, and the city leaders wanted to keep the money local. It made coffins ridiculously heavy and expensive, but the economy thrived. Even pirates had laws. That's right, actual pirate codes were written down and enforced. In 1720, Bartholomew Black Bart Roberts, one of the most feared pirates in the Atlantic, had a strict code aboard his ship. Among the rules, no gambling, no women, and no fighting aboard the ship. Anyone caught breaking the rules? Marooned or worse. Black Bart's rules were written not for justice, but for order. On the high seas, chaos was death. Even criminals needed laws. Some laws tried to control human behavior with hilarious consequences. In 17th century Russia, Tsar Peter the Great imposed a beard tax. If you wanted to keep your beard, you had to pay for it and carry a coin to prove you paid. The coin had an image of a beard and the phrase, "The beard is a superfluous burden." Men caught without the token had their beards publicly shaved. It gets stranger. In 18th century Denmark, a law required married couples to name their firstborn child after a grandparent. If they didn't, they were fined. Naming your child was not a right. It was a state-regulated responsibility. And then there's sumptuary laws, rules that dictated what people could wear. In Renaissance Italy, women could be fined for wearing pearls that were too large. In Elizabethan England, only nobility could wear purple. Colors and fabrics were reserved for the elite and reedom. If a merchant dared wear silk, they could be arrested. Fashion was a crime. In Japan's Edo period, the shogunate passed a law banning citizens from showing joy during periods of national mourning, even in private. Laughter could result in punishment. Imagine trying to suppress a giggle and fearing for your freedom. In Iceland, a law from the 1600s outlawed keeping a dog in Reykjavik, the capital. Cats were fine, but dogs? Illegal. The ban lasted decades. The reason? Fear of disease and overpopulation. It wasn't lifted until 1984. And then there's the story of King James of England. In 1616, he declared that playing sports on Sundays was acceptable, but only for men who had attended church. The law became known as the Book of Sports. Puritans hated it. The king's enemies despised it. But James was convinced sports would keep his subjects healthy and loyal. If you found this journey through the absurd, the hilarious, and the hauntingly real as fascinating as we did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible dives into the forgotten corners of time. Share this video with a friend who loves history or just weird facts to impress at parties. This is time's battlefield, where the past is never dead. It's just waiting to be rediscovered. Stay curious. We'll see you in the next battle.